Masechet Yevamot, Daf Sadi Gimel. We're going to be speaking about acquiring something that does not yet exist in the world. We began this discussion yesterday with Rabbi Akiva, talking about a case where a wife makes a vow and says, all of my future earnings are like a korban and prohibited to my husband. My husband cannot take them. So that would be against the rules of the ketubah. Rabbi Akiva said the husband, if he doesn't want that to happen, can and should annul his wife's vow. From the fact that he says that he should annul the wife's vow means that if he does not annul it, the vow will apply even though it's to future earnings, future paychecks that she doesn't even have yet. So this shows that according to Rabbi Akiva, one can make an acquisition / make a vow about who acquires the future earnings even though they don't exist yet. So Rabbi Akiva must think that you can make a transaction for something that you will acquire in the future. We tried to bring that a proof, and then we said, no, not necessarily. Maybe in her language, she didn't say my future earnings, but she said my hands. God has given me. They will be sanctified to their creator, le'osehem, to God. And so since she is sanctifying her hands, which do exist in the world, and only as a consequence, the works of her, the future works of her hands, but her hands exist now. So not necessarily. Therefore, the bottom line was that Rabbi Akiva thinks that you cannot acquire something that does not yet exist, and that's why it has to be only with the language of these hands are sanctified. All right, with that, we next say, Upeliga de Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, this last opinion, that according to which Rabbi Akiva says you cannot acquire davar shelo ba la'olam, it disagrees with what Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, he's now going to list 8 different sages who all think that yes, you can acquire something that does not yet exist in the world. And then the Gemara is going to go through each one of these 8 and show the proof that they in fact say that. So Rav Huna Kirav. Rav Huna follows the opinion of Rav. This is also a good source for all the student-teacher relationships. Rav Huna was the prime student of Rav. Rav Kerebi Anai, Kerebi Anai Kerebi Chiya, Kerebi Chiya Kerebi. And so Rav is a first generation Amora. These next 2 are in between Tanaim and Amoraim. They're transition sages, and they learned from Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, even though Rav also studied directly with Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. So somewhat, some overlap. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi is a 5th generation Tana who studied from Rabbi Meir, the 4th generation Tana. Rabbi Meir Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Rabbi Akiva, Damar Adam Makne Davar Shelo Ba'al Ha'olam. And so the last one on the list, Rabbi Akiva, the 3rd generation Tana. All of them say, yeah, this in fact someone can acquire. So you see that this includes Rabbi Akiva, who does think you can acquire, and that's why it contradicts what we said before. All right, let's see each one. Rav Huna, Maihi, when did Rav Huna say this? Someone says, I will sell you the fruit of the palm tree. The fruit hasn't grown yet. When it grows, these coconuts are yours. Amar Rav Huna, from now, right? The sale is from now, even though they didn't grow yet. So the acquisition does work. Now it's true, before they grow, either side can renege on the deal, because they don't actually exist yet. So you're going to say, I changed my mind, and that's okay. But once they do grow, even if they make no further transaction, then they cannot go back on the deal. And in fact, the acquisition is valid from the time that they made it. So there you go. That acquisition works, right? As long as they don't change their minds before it grows, that transaction does take effect, even though when they did it, the fruit didn't grow yet. Now, a side point that Rav Nachman happens to disagree with this, so he's not in the list. He says, even when they come into the world, even when the fruit grows, they can change their mind. His reason is because when they made the acquisition, since it didn't exist yet, the acquisition is like nothing. It's like if I sell you the Brooklyn Bridge, it doesn't affect anything. You cannot go and take it, and so therefore, they could change their mind at any time, and they would have to actually, after it grows, then make another sale. Amar Rav Nachman, although Rav Nachman does agree to some degree that if the buyer comes and takes it, seizes the fruit, even though the seller says, I changed my mind, in other words, after it grows, the seller says, I changed my mind, if the buyer would come and take it against the will of the seller, the court would not remove it from him, because they did have some transaction. So he does admit that there's at least a shadow of a sale that's legitimate enough that b'di avad, if the buyer takes it, he can keep it. All right, that's number one. Next, Rav. Damar Rav Huna Amar Rav Hamer l'chavero sadeh zo sheni lokech lichshe'ekachena kenuya lecha me'achshav kana. A person says, I'm going to be buying this field. When I buy it, this field that I'm going to buy, when I buy it, it is sold to you. Now he wants to flip it. He's going to flip it and make a profit on the deal, and this works even though that middleman, he did not own it at the time that he's selling it, yet it still works. As soon as he buys it, the other party, the third party, does in fact get it immediately, and so that works. From that acquisition works from the time they make the deal. And so even though it doesn't exist, I mean, the field exists, it's in the world, but the point is that the middleman does not own it to sell it. Nevertheless, because he's going to own it, he can even sell it even now. So that's number two. Rabbi Yanai ke Rabbi Chaya. Damar Rabbi Yanai, hava le arisa dave amaiti le katna de pere kol male shabbeta. We're going to see in this one story both the opinions of Rabbi Yanai and Rabbi Chaya. So there's really only 7 sources that we need to bring, although 8 sages. So Rabbi Yanai had a sharecropper who would bring, the sharecropper would bring to Rabbi Yanai a basket of fruit every Shabbat Eve. The sharecropper, he grows a bunch of things. He keeps some, and some of it he gives to the owner. So this is part of what he's going to give to the owner, although he does have to give it to him. And the custom was he would give it to him every Friday afternoon. So special, he would have fresh fruit every Shabbat. But one day it got very late and the sharecropper did not come. And Rabbi Yanai is worried about this. What if he comes last minute? He may come just a minute before Shabbat, and then, yes, while I have the fruit, he won't have a chance to take teruma and maaser, and in that case, he won't be able to eat it, because one is not allowed to take teruma and maaser on Shabbat. It's only the Rabbanan that you're not allowed, but still you're not allowed to do it. So what did Rabbi Yanai do? Shakal iser mi pere de bete alayhu atalakamed Rabbi Chaya. Rabbi Yanai took from some fruit he had in the house. He separated a portion, and he said, "This will be maaser for the fruit that the sharecropper will bring whenever he brings it. I'm taking the maaser from now." So you see, this is something that does not exist in the world. Now that fruit does exist, but we don't know what state it's in. Did he cut it yet? Did he prepare it yet? It's not even it's still in the sharecropper's ownership. He didn't give it to Rabbi Yanai yet. So Rabbi Yanai does not have any possibility, any access to it. It may not even be required in teruma and maaser just yet. So yet he's taking maaser from now on, something that fruit that he's gonna get in the future. So there you go. Someone can make a transaction for something that does not yet exist in his possession. Okay, so he did this. Rabbi Yanai did it, but he wasn't sure if it was correct. So he came to Rabbi Chaya. Amar le Shapira bat Rabbi Chaya says, Hazak Baruch, that's fine. What you did is totally valid. How do I know? Tanya, leman tilmad liyir'at Adonai Elohecha kol hayamim. Pasuk says that Hashem wants Bnei Yisrael to learn to fear Hashem all their days. Now, what's this kol hayamim? What to include which days? Elu Shabbatot v'yamim tovim, to say even on Shabbat and Yom Tov, one should also fear God on those days. Now, if you look at the context of this pasuk, you'll see that it is in fact talking about maaser. In Devarim 14 here, it says, Aser ta'aser, take maaser of all of your produce and eat it before Hashem in the city that He will choose, so that you will learn to fear God all the days. That by giving maaser, showing our gratitude, our humility, and thankfulness that Hashem has given us this produce. Okay, so that's very, very nice. But what's the Kol Hayamim coming to include? That even on Shabbat and Yom Tov. Now, what do you mean even on Shabbat Yom Tov? What does the maaser have to do? Is it to teach us that we can take maaser even on Shabbat and Yom Tov? Do we need a pasuk to come and tell us that it's permitted, when after all the prohibition is only about moving something? It's only a dirabanan prohibition. In other words, according to on a doraita level, one is allowed to take to the maaser. So you wouldn't need a pasuk to come and say you should fear God, show your fear through taking maaser even on Shabbat. I don't need a pasuk because on a doraita level, I'm allowed to take to the maaser on Shabbat. It's only the rabbis that came and said, Tiltul, you're taking something, you're moving something, it's mukseh, because you can't eat it the way it is right now. So I wouldn't need a pasuk to permit something that's only asur midrabanan. So rather, what is this talking about? Elalav ki hai gavna. Rather, the pasuk must be saying to fear God all the days, even Shabbat and Yom Tov, meaning a case just like this, where if you have a fruit that didn't make it yet and may just come a minute before Shabbat, you're allowed to take teruman maaser from beforehand, from existing produce in your house, even though the produce has not come into your hands yet. And yet that is permitted, proving that one can make a transaction with something that is not yet in the world. So he says, yeah, you did good. I didn't even have a proof for it. Okay, however, the Bi'anai objected to the Bichiyah and said, hold on, I don't know if your proof is so good, because after all, I had a dream. And in the dream, they read to me, the sages would often hear words read to them in a dream, and these were a 60th of prophecy, these were true dreams. But you still have to figure out what it meant. And he saw that they read to them a pasuk that said, Kaneh rasutz, broken reed. My love hachi ka'amri li, hine batachti lechal mishaynet kaneh harasus hazeh. So what's the full pasuk? This phrase appears more than once in Tanakh. So isn't he referring to the pasuk in Melachim Bet, which is where Rav Shakeh, the general of the Assyrian army, comes to the walls of Jerusalem and is taunting the guards and saying that, see, look how you trust on the staff of a broken reed. He's referring to as you're trusting in Egypt. Okay, but the context here is that, look, since they read us this pasuk, it means that our reliance on that pasuk, the one from Devarim, that's a broken reed. Not that the pasuk is a broken reed, but our interpretation is a broken reed. That's not really what the pasuk meant. And so maybe it doesn't sound like this is good, because this dream is not supporting the proof. But Abichia said, no, don't worry about it. It's a good proof, the one I gave you. Lo, hachi ka'amri lach. When you saw that in the dream, that you heard them say Kaneh rasus, they weren't referring to that pasuk in Melachim, but rather a different pasuk in Yeshaya. That's referring to, in a Peshat, the Mashiach. That says, Kaneh rasus lo yishbor, ufishtat cheha lo yecha benna. Mashiach will be so powerful that he won't even need to break a reed. A dimly burning wick shall not quench, but truth he shall bring forth. He won't even have to lift a finger, so to speak. Do anything to show it. It'll be so clear. So you see, the point here is that it's a kaneh rasutz that will not break. That's the opposite. This is a true interpretation, as the rest of the pasuk says. And so there you go. Both of these sages affirm with support of a dream and without the support of a broken reed, that this is in fact the halacha. And so according to both of them, yes, you can acquire something that does not yet exist in the world. Okay, next sage, Rabbi the Tanya lo taskir Aved el adonav. Pasuk says you should not deliver a slave to his master if he ran away. So if a slave runs away, he comes to you, he says, please help me. You're not allowed to capture him and bring him back to his original master. You have to, in fact, harbor the runaway slave, which is an amazing pasuk because it means that would have given incentive to all slaves to run away, which is, I guess, the whole point of the Torah, to, in that way, eventually abolish slavery. Okay, Rabbi Omer, Belokech Ebed al menat l'shachrero, katuv in the Rabbi applies it to the following case. If I acquire a slave on condition that I will free him. That's what I tell him. So that this is a possible thing to do, and the pasuk is saying, don't do that, and then keep him. You're not allowed. If you make this condition upon acquiring that I will free you, and then you keep him, that would violate this pasuk. Okay, what's the point? Hechidame amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak dechatab le lichshe'ekachacha haratzmecha kanu lecha me'achshav. How would you formulate this in the document that you are acquiring him? You would say, at the time that I buy you, you are your own. You are acquired by yourself, right? My acquisition is actually on behalf of you acquiring back your own freedom from now, and it's done from now, from the time of the acquisition, even before the buyer gets him. He is already selling the slave to himself. So it's very similar to the case above of the person buying land and then flipping it. He's able to sell it even before he buys it. So there you go. That's Rabbi. Rabbi Meir Ditnan Omer leisha hare at mikudeshet li lachar she'etgayer lachar she'titgayeri. Rabbi Meir is quoting here. It says Ditnan, and it is similar to the Mishnah that we cited above in the previous daf, although it is a little bit different. So this should probably be the Tanya. It's a Baraita, or a slightly different version of the Mishnah. And it says, someone who says to his wife, his future wife, you are mikudeshet li after I convert. He's not Jewish. He says, I'm going to give you this ring. When I convert, it'll apply from now. According to Tanakama, this does not work. According to Rabbi Meir, it does work. That's going to be the point of Rabbi Meir. Or after you convert, if she's not Jewish, if either one of them are slaves, and the slave cannot do kiddushin, and yet, according to Rabbi Meir, they can make such a condition. If she is married and he says, I will be mikudeshet to you from now after your husband dies, she is not available, she's not eligible for kiddushin now, and yet according to Rabbi Meir, he's going to say mikudeshet, that even though she does not exist in the world now, I mean, this woman exists, but she does exist as an eligible partner with whom one can do kiddushin, and yet it works from now for the future. Or if he's married to a sister, and a man is married to a sister, and he says, after this sister dies, then you will be mikudeshet to me, tells the other sister, because she again also is not available to do kiddushin, because he cannot be married to two sisters, and when the first one is still alive. The person goes to a shomeret yavam and says, after your yavam does chalitza, then you are mikudeshet to me. All these, according to Tanakama, says, and I'm mikudeshet, because they're not available. It has to work at the time of kiddushin. She has to be there and available and Jewish and not a slave. Rabbi Meir Omer mikudesh. Rabbi Meir says it works. So you see, according to Rabbi Meir, yes, you can acquire in this case, a person, acquire in the sense of kiddushin, even though she does not yet exist as a person who's available to be mikudeshet just yet. Next, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov de Tanya. Yater al ken amar Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Afilu im amar perot aruga zo telushim yu teruma al perot aruga mechubarim. A person has two gardens, one where the fruit is detached, one where it is attached to the ground. And so Rabbi Eliezer says, if someone says the fruit of this garden that are detached from the ground should be considered teruma for the one that's still attached to the ground. Now, the one that's still attached to the ground is not yet ready for teruma, not yet ready for taking teruma, and yet he says it's okay. Or the other way around, o perot aruga mechubarim. Al perot zot telushin lichsheyaviu shelish v'yitalshu. This one is even greater chidush. if someone says the fruit of this field that are attached are going mechubarim are going to be teruma for the fruit of the other one that is not attached to the ground. And when will this? When will it take place? When will it take effect? When they grow a third. And they will eventually become detached. So when they grow and then they become detached, then they will be considered teruma for the other produce that's already detached now. So in this case, this thing that you're taking as teruma, separating as teruma, does not yet exist. I mean, it exists as baby carrots. But doesn't yet exist fully, and yet you could say I am separating the future fruit that will grow and be detached for this other fruit. Eventually, when they grow and they are detached, that statement works, and he doesn't have to take teruma again. Right? What he said back then is, in fact, does work eventually. And he doesn't have to make any further statement or separation. So there you go. Rabbi Ben Yaakov says you can make a transaction with something that didn't yet exist, does not exist in the world. And finally, Rabbi Akiva ditnan kunam shani oseh lepicha eno sarich lehafer. The same source that we saw at the end of the previous daf, where for what woman says kunam, that's a language. It's a nickname for korban. They don't want to say korban, so because that's like a vow. So they use a nickname, even though it means the same thing. So a vow that I will not give what I earn to your mouth. In other words, it's not going to. My earnings are withheld from you. In that case, a person does not have to do any nullification because it just goes against the ketubah. Rabbi Akiva Omer Yafer Shema Tadif Alav Yatem Min Hara'oi Lo. Rabbi Akiva, however, says could be that she's going to make a lot more money. And yes, while the basic amount is more or less equivalent to what she's going to eat, so then, yeah, it doesn't have to make undo that vow. But she may land a great job and be making $1 million. And then in that case, the ketuvah would not cancel that out. She would be able to say this and keep it. If the husband does not want that to happen, he has to nullify the future, or nullify the vow about the future earnings, which means if he doesn't nullify it, the vow does take place. How could a vow take place on something that doesn't yet exist in the world? Must be Rabbi Akiva thinks that you can make an acquisition or a transaction, a vow, about something that doesn't yet exist in the world. And here it's concluded as conclusive proof, and we don't cite the counter argument that we did before, that maybe she just says, my hands are sanctified. All right, so that concludes the section of something that did not yet exist in the world. And now we have another question. We saw in our opening Mishnah, according to the interpretation of the Talmud, that one witness that comes to the court and says, I saw that your husband is dead, we believe that witness, and she can go and get remarried. Okay, that's fine. But what about one witness regarding her doing yibum? We understand you rely on one witness for her to go get married to someone, not a case of yibum, that your husband is dead, so she can go get married to anyone and that she wants to marry. But if she says, one witness that comes and says, I saw your husband die and he has no children and there is a brother, can she then go do yibum based on that testimony and marry that brother? So let's analyze it. What's the reason that we're relying on one witness, even though usually we need two witnesses? Maybe it's because that regarding any matter that will become revealed, someone doesn't lie, right? I'm not going to lie about something when tomorrow everyone's going to find out the truth anyway. And so here, where the husband may very well, if he's alive, probably he will at some point come back. So no one's going to lie and say, I saw your husband dead, when he can be refuted at any moment. And that's true in both cases. So that here also, he's not going to lie and say your husband is dead. And so we can trust the one witness based on that. So then in that case, yes, she can do yibum. Or maybe the reason why, in the case of the first Mishnah where the husband goes away, we trust the one witness because we're not really totally trusting the one witness. We're putting the burden on the woman herself to do her own investigation. Hire a private investigator to go make sure that you're convinced sufficiently that your husband is dead. So that's what we actually are relying on in that case. Will that apply to Yibum? Not necessarily. Here, could be that the Yevamah loves the Yavam. She has her eyes on him, and therefore she's like, I'm not going to check. There's one witness. I'm going to go for it. I always wanted to marry my brother-in-law anyway, or maybe not. Maybe now. You know what? I see. I really like him. And so she's not going to check so much to marry him in particular, because otherwise she would always be prohibited to him. Then she will not check. Unlike a woman is going to go and marry anyone in the world, where it's no particular connection to any particular person that she's in love with. So she will do an investigation beforehand. All right, so that's the two sides of the question. Amalehu Rav Sheshat. So this was asked of Rav Sheshat, and he says, Tenetua. Oh, we have a Mishnah about this. Amru la met benech v'achar kach met ba'alech v'nitya b'matz. Our Mishnah that we're discussing now, where some testimony comes in. We're going to see what kind of testimony. One witness, two witness, something comes and says, first your son died, and only after that your husband died. Since the son died first, so that means when the husband died without children. So she needs to do Yibum. V'nitya b'man, sure enough, she does Yibum with the deceased brother. And then some other, one witness, two witnesses, we'll see, come and say, oh, we got the order wrong. They got the first set of witnesses, got the order wrong. In that case, it's a big problem. This is the one that's really a mamzer, mid deoraita, because she did yibum, which means she was with her brother-in-law, and it was not yibum. So this is arayot, and therefore the children, both before the second set of witnesses come and after, are both mamzerim. Okay. Now let's analyze this. What exactly is the case that you're talking about? If the first set of witnesses were two, and the second set of witnesses were also two, then the second set of witnesses don't have more power over the first. Who said you should rely on the second two? Rely on the first two. So therefore, she doesn't have to do anything. Once the first two witnesses come and say your son died first, and then the husband died, so she is on good grounding to do Yibum. A second set of witnesses come and say the opposite. Maybe the second one's lying, so leave her alone. She can stay with the Yavam, and the children will be just fine. So can't be talking about that case, because our Mishnah says she has to leave, and the children are mamzerim. Ve'od mamzer, safek mamzer hu. And even so, even in that case, even if you said, okay, you know what, leave your husband, because leave the Yavam, because 50-50 chance you don't want to stay with him, could be adva. But the children that they had, you wouldn't call them mamzerim. They would have to be safek mamzerim. It's a big difference. A mamzer can marry a mamzer, but a safek mamzer cannot marry a full mamzer, because maybe he's not a mamzer. So you have to distinguish, and it doesn't say that. And maybe you'll say, oh, the Mishnah was not giving exact language. It meant safek mamzer. It just says mamzer. The point is he can't marry a regular Jew, even though they're not 100% mamzer. And that's really what the Mishnah means. No, you can't say that. Since the Mishnah goes out of its way to say that in the other case, in the next case, that the first one is a mamzer, the second one is not a mamzer. See, it's being very careful to distinguish between who is exactly a mamzer, which manner and which not manner it's not. So if it was a safek mamzer, it would have been careful to say so. And therefore, we can assume that, no, these are in fact a full mamzer. Therefore, this case cannot be talking about 2 and 2. Instead, it means that the first witness was only one witness who said that your son died first, and then your husband died after without children, and you could do yibum. And the only reason that she has a problem now is that she has to leave him, the Yavam, is because two came and contradicted the one. But if not for that, if the two witnesses did not come, it would be totally fine, permitted for her to marry, which means that we conclude the answer. Do you trust one witness even to do yibum? The answer is yes, right? This is the exact case, and we do trust them. Okay, that's answer number one, and we'll end with answer number two, which is Vika de Amar. And some say Ha lati ba'elach, that the Rav Sheshet says, don't ask that question. Tafilu ihi name mehemna. In fact, of course, one witness is believed. Yes, she can do that. It's not even a good question, because even she herself is believed, the wife herself. Titnan. Mishnah, this is coming up later in this Masechet. Isha shamra met bali. If she comes, the wife comes, says, my husband died. Tinaseh, we believe her, and she can get remarried. Met ba'ali, tityabem. Or if she says, my husband died, and it's without children, and she can do yibum based on it. So if you can trust the wife herself, and she is only one witness, and she is related to herself, and therefore potentially nogeh b'davar, and she's a woman, and all these things, and yet you can rely on her, certainly that would be, you can rely on one witness. So it can't be the question there. Rather, we must be talking about a case where the one witness comes and says the Yavam is the one that died. Right? She's a Shomedet Yavam. She's waiting to do Yibum with this guy. And witness comes and says, oh, your Yavam, he died, and he's the only brother. Therefore, you're allowed to go free. In that case, do we believe him? My ta'ama de'ayed mishum demilta David legluye lo meshaker hachanamem lo meshaker. So this is where we ask the two sides of the question. What's the reason why, in general, we believe one witness in the case of the first Mishnah of the Perek when he goes away? Because it is something that will be revealed. Eventually, if the husband's alive, he may very well come back. And so no one's going to lie about something that he can be contradicted. He can be contradicted. And here too would be the same thing. If he testifies the Yavam died, the Yavam is in fact alive, no one's going to lie about something that will show him to be a liar. So in that case, yes, we do believe him. Or the other side of it, Dilma. The reason why we believe one witness in the case where they say the husband died is because she will double check and make sure. We assume that she loved her husband and wishes she could be with him. So she's going to really make sure that do a private investigation before she goes ahead and gets remarried. La daika mina seba de misnahu desanya le. But when it comes to the Yavam, she may very well hate the Yavam. Above we said maybe she loves the Yavam. Well, there's some cases where she loves the Yavam, some cases where she hates the Yavam. In this case, we have to worry maybe she actually hates the Yavam. And therefore, when she hears any testimony, even one witness that says the Yavam died, she's going to say, oh, great, now I'm going to go marry someone. I hated that guy. I didn't want to marry him at all. And so she's not going to do an investigation. So these are the two sides of the question. In this version, in the first side, yes, we believe one witness. In the second side, we would not. And so Rav Sheshet was asked the question, and he answers it. And let's look at his answer, because it's very similar in form to the one that we already saw, so it'll be easy. Rav Sheshet, Tinituha. Oh, we have this in our very Mishnah. Amru la met ba'alich v'achar kach met benech. If some testimony, we'll see one or two witnesses, say that first your husband died, and then the child died. In which case, when the husband died, he was with child, so he's no need for yibum or chalitza. So she goes and marries anybody else, someone else. And then witnesses come and say, no, sorry, it was the opposite. You needed to do yibum. This is the first case in our Mishnah. She has to leave, and the children before and after she found out are mamzerim. We saw this is all according to the Akiva. Now, what exactly is the case? How many witnesses? If it was 2 witnesses and 2 witnesses, why? Who says you should rely on the second and make her leave and make the mamzerim? Just say, oh, well, rely on the first, and the first 2 are just as good, and so leave the kids alone, and she can stay married. Ve'od mamzer, asafek mamzer hu. And also, not for sure mamzer, it's 50-50. If 2 witnesses against 2 witnesses, so it should be only, the Mishnah should have said, it's only a doubtful mamzer. And if you say, that's really what the Mishnah meant, and just not be using careful language. And the third case of the Mishnah, it said that from before they found out, before the husband died, they are mamzerim, and the kids she has with someone else after the husband died are not mamzerim. So you see the Mishnah is very careful to explain exactly who is mamzer and what kind of mamzer. So therefore, Shema Mina Dadav Katane, that is saying it precisely. So therefore, it cannot be that this Mishnah is talking about 2 witnesses that came at first. Ela lav had v'tamadatu betre cheshuha halav hachi meheman. Rather, 1 witness came at first and told them the first order, and then 2 witnesses came and says it was the other way around. And if not for the second 2 witnesses, we would believe the first witness. And this is equivalent to the case that he was asked, because in this case, the 1 witness is coming and saying that you can go get married outside. You don't have to do yibum, because when your husband died, he had a child. So just like this 1 witness is believed to say you don't have to do yibum, that's equivalent to a case where 1 witness comes and says your yavam died. All right. Either way, she may just not like the yavam, and so is happy to say either the yavam died or to believe a witness that said that your husband died first and the child was still alive when he died. Either case, we believe 1 witness to allow her to marry to marry someone else besides her yavam. And so that's the answer to the question. So yes, we do believe 1 witness. And then we finally say, Le'olam today. Wait a second, not necessarily. It could be. It is 2 and 2. The first set of witnesses were in fact 2. And how can we believe the second over the first? We'll borrow and answer a statement that Avacha bar Minyome said in a different context, and we'll apply it here. And we say maybe here the second set of witnesses were not contradictory witnesses. They didn't say, yeah, we saw the opposite, but rather they are witnesses that prove the first witnesses were false. And they say these first 2 witnesses could not possibly have seen what they said that they saw, because they were not there at the time, and therefore they completely undercut the first set of witnesses, and that's why she would have to leave and the children are mamzerim. But in fact, it could be talking about 2 and 2, and so we do not have a Rav Sheshat's proof is not a final proof for this question. Baruch Adonai L'olam, Amen v'Amen.